Hello, Amy. I'm here for the party. I hope I'm not too early.
From Bellingham and Fairhaven, Misha and Dianne are watching Santa Barbara. Welcome to Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara Week 31.
Hello.
We have just watched episode 148. Originally aired Monday, February 25th, 1985. Cruz arrives at Kelly and Joe's, and I was mistaken. Peter didn't actually leave the perfume. He had just sprayed some perfume on the duvet. Mm-hmm. Kelly tells Cruz that you can still smell it in the air. Mm-hmm. Cruz checks the closet this time, just to make sure Peter's not there, because he thinks they must have just missed him. Kelly's really worried about Peter because of his, death-defying acts in recent days. And Cruz says he's not Superman. Mm. And then he says he'll see them at the party. Peter, who has broken into the Perkins house, tells Amy to start calling everyone to cancel the party, except Kelly. So Amy calls Kelly and tells her to come to the party. She has a surprise for her and to come a bit early. She's not really able to leave any clues in her message to Kelly.
No.
Jackie calls to say that Larry's coming home and she wants to swing by to get changed. Amy tries to talk her out of coming, but Jackie hangs up before Amy can talk her out of it. And Jackie arrives and is taken hostage as well. At the Capwell Hotel, Mason tells Gina that Hank is getting out of prison the day before she marries Cece, which is currently tentatively scheduled as March 12th. So we've got about a month before our next big wedding of Santa Barbara. Augusta meets with an attorney, not their normal attorney, it's pointed out, to find out what would happen if someone was getting married and their dead wife showed up alive. He says, "Are you planning some long-term revenge on Lionel?" He says that if the person died more than 7 years ago, they need to have been declared legally dead. Mm. And then Mason quizzes him later on about what Augusta asked about. Kind of threatens him with the fact that he's at the top of the list for... was it a Supreme Court judge? Is that what it was?
I don't know if it was that high up. I think it was just a judgeship.
Mm. So the guy spills, what Augusta was asking about, and Mason says, did she specifically ask about Sophia Capwell? Mm. So Mason realizes that this could be some way to annoy his father, so he does some research and finds out that Cece never bothered to have Sophia declared legally dead. Mm-hmm. So if he marries Gina, the marriage would be invalid. Mm-hmm. So Mason tries to decide at what point during the ceremony is going to spring this on Mason, when he puts on Cece, when he puts the ring on, when they ask if there's anyone present who can give just cause why this wedding can't continue. So he's very excited to have something on Cece.
Now, interestingly enough, and I think it's because he's very wrapped up in this little revenge fantasy with Cece, he doesn't take it a step farther and think to himself why Augusta would be asking this line of questioning. And you remember, a few episodes back, probably about 2 weeks ago, when Lionel was still in prison, he and Augusta had a little chat, and they agreed that they were both very suspicious of the Contessa Armonte. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of interesting to me that he, wouldn't be starting to make those connections, because really this only works if Sophia is still alive, or if it could be even pretended that she was still alive.
Well, yeah, he's glossing over why is Augusta asking this. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Then Augusta invites Gina to tea. She asks Gina if she wants sugar, and Gina says, no, I never take it. And then Augusta puts a cube of sugar in her own tea, and then a cube in Gina's tea.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a lovely conversation that's very,
Catty.
yes, on the surface they're being very polite, but really they're taking digs at each other. And she's there to tell Gina that there are pitfalls to marrying C.C. Capwell, as you'll be the third Mrs. Capwell.
Mm.
And it won't take you long to find out why Gina became unfaithful. Why Sophia became unfaithful. And then Gina takes that as an opportunity to make a dig at, the fact that she was unfaithful with Augusta's husband.
Now, I wondered what Augusta's sort of motive for this was, if it's just to, play with Gina a bit and just get a little bit more enjoyment out of her secret knowledge of Sophia being alive, or if there was, she was maybe trying to plant some seeds of doubt in Gina's mind, or just basically create a bit of discord between her and CC.
Because she starts out by saying, "Oh, I wish hope we can still be friends, even though our families are feuding." And at first, I thought that's actually where the conversation was going to go. Thought that would be interesting, but it turns out that was just an end to the conversation. And then Gina says, "Well, considering your husband had an affair with my husband's ex-wife or late wife, I don't think we'll be getting over that feud anytime soon."
No.
Then Gina leaves and makes sure to hand Augusta the bill. Mason arrives at the party and is taken hostage. Peter briefly thinks he's CC. So throughout this whole time, Peter's really talking, alternating between talking nonsense and talking about Kelly and how they're married, and then the angry Peter who thinks everyone's trying to trick him comes out. So while Amy's making these phone calls, it's a fine line for her to try to figure out if she can slip something past Peter and, get past all his suspicions that she's going to try to betray him.
I think in this scene, though, we really see that Peter's condition is deteriorating because he seems to have a little sort of episode while he's talking to Mason, and he thinks Mason...
He gets agonizing pain in his head at one point.
Yeah, and he thinks Mason is CC, and then he doesn't know who Mason is, and he's just in and out completely, and you can see Mason and Jackie and Amy are kind of looking at him, sort of wondering what's coming next, and it's slowly dawning on everyone that he's completely unstable.
But of course he's got the machine pistol with him the entire time.
Yeah.
Amy calls the Capwell mansion. She's been trying to get through to someone there all day, and Cruz answers eventually. And she calls him Gina, hoping he'll figure it out, and he does, and he immediately calls in to find out what's going on at the house. But then Gina calls.
Yeah.
And Peter is near the phone when that happens, and he realizes it's Gina's voice. So he gets angry with Amy. Mason steps up to try to defend her. He is immediately knocked unconscious by Peter with this machine pistol.
So that's sort of twice.
Twice in 1 week, Mason's been lying on the floor.
Yeah.
Cruz tells the officer on the scene not to let Kelly and Joe enter, because Kelly and Joe have run into Larry outside on the porch, and they chat a bit about things before going in. So they actually are there quite a while. A police officer comes to check on them at one point before Cruz's call and doesn't realize anything's wrong somehow. So before anyone can stop them, Kelly, Joe, and Larry enter the house. And Peter, seeing Larry's Navy uniform, thinks he's a police officer. And then there's just a mad scramble, and suddenly a shot rings out.
Yeah.
So I think we both are thinking Larry's been shot.
Yeah, and of course Cruz is hearing all this on the phone.
That's right, too. Yes, that's true, because he does phone.
he phones back
He
to
phones back.
try and get a better sense of
So
what's
he's
going on.
overhearing this. And, yeah.
So the last thing we see in this episode is Cruz racing out the door because things have obviously gone very wrong at the Perkins house.
Mm-hmm. And that is the end of that episode. So do you think we've lost Larry already?
I feel like we've lost Larry, or Larry will be taken off to hospital, and that might provide a little bit of drama for Jackie.
Mm-hmm.
And, that would be, but yeah, I think Larry's probably the one who's going to be the main sufferer from this, and we've sort of seen it set up because Peter keeps talking about how there's this guy dressed as a policeman outside the window talking to Joe and Kelly, and for the last probably quarter of the episode he's kind of peeking out the window at them and getting more and more agitated by Larry's uniform.
Yeah. I think if Larry dies, that would make sense with our theory of maybe about Jackie and Ted getting together. Mm-hmm. Especially since Larry and Jackie aren't on the outs or anything. It wouldn't make sense otherwise. So,
Yeah.
Assuming that's where it goes.
Yeah.
So we'll find out if Larry is dead or if he will linger for a few days.
And what happens afterwards? Does everyone just jump on top of Peter? Does he get arrested? Is the next scene with Peter, him in jail having an episode? What happens next? I imagine Kelly, who's already extremely traumatized, will be very traumatized by this, whatever happens.
Mm-hmm. And remember, Cece and Eden are still coming to the party because no one was able to reach them. So they might blunder in somehow, too.
Yeah, unless Gina's managed to get a hold of Cece, although she was on her way there, too. So. Mm-hmm.
We'll find out a little more when we watch episode 149 of Santa Barbara.
See ya.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We've just watched episode 149 of Santa Barbara. Originally aired Tuesday, February 26th, 1985. Well, Larry does seem to go down in a hail of gunfire, but he whispers to Jackie that he's actually all right, although he doesn't seem to be entirely all right.
No.
Peter tells Mason and Joe to carry Larry into the nursery, and he lets Jackie stay in there with him. And Jackie tells Larry she wants him to quit the Navy after this tour of duty. And he says he has a plan, and he'll need her to distract Peter at some point. Mm-hmm. Peter mistakes Mason for Cece again, and Peter asks Cece why he didn't let him marry Kelly. And Mason says, "Oh, it's because I knew you were sick." And he says, "Maybe after all this is all over, you and Kelly can get married." And Peter says, "We're already married. We've had our honeymoon." Meanwhile, Joe is sneaking around to try to get behind Peter, but Peter sees him and raises the gun. And Peter says, "Another of CC's tricks. Big war hero, shot down behind enemy lines." So this picks up from yesterday's war hero talk of Mason's. So we're starting to get more of CC's backstory.
Yeah.
Coming in. So I'm going to expect some nice dyed brown hair at some point in a flashback scene.
A flashback, I'm sure.
Yeah. Peter talks to Cruz, who's now taken over the house across the street, and he demands to talk to Kelly. Cruz decides it's too dangerous to have Kelly talk to him directly in case she says something wrong. So he asks her to pre-tape a message, and he plays that to Peter. But he says, "Oh, this is a tape. I want to talk to the real Kelly." And Kelly grabs the phone and says, "I'll come out in 5 minutes." So this is not really what Cruz had wanted. But she really is worried about, Amy being inside and Joe. She's, quite sure that Joe will be the first to go. In fact, Peter says he'll shoot Joe first and then Mason.
Yeah.
If Kelly doesn't come in. Inside, Peter bets Amy $1 that her baby will be a boy.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says, "Here, keep the dollar for me in case something happens to me." And then Peter agrees to let Amy leave, and they send her off to the hospital. Now, Officer Maggie Gillis decides to disguise herself as Kelly. They get her a wig quite quickly.
I managed to tie it in Kelly's little top knot that she's wearing this episode.
In the dark, it should pass. It's not quite, it's a little too blonde for Kelly, but it's like on Supergirl last week when they had to show her without her bangs in some flashbacks, and the wig was very distractingly not like Melissa Benoist's hair. Peter opens the door and sees Officer Gillis at the corner of the house, kind of shrouded in shadows and shrubbery, and he wants her to come closer. And Cruz had said that if she couldn't draw Peter out far enough for the snipers, that she should pretend to stumble and draw her own gun and shoot him. So she does that. She gets the gun. She points it at him, but she freezes up. I don't know if she was worried that there was someone behind him, but she doesn't shoot, and he starts shooting at her with the machine pistol. At that point, Larry makes his move and jumps Peter. And in the scuffle, everyone gets out except Joe.
Yeah.
So now Peter has Joe at gunpoint. So I don't know if Larry's plan was really that great.
No, but it did get most of them out,
Because
such as it was.
Mason and Joe could have jumped Peter just as easily at that point.
Yeah,
other than Larry.
yeah,
You didn't
that's
need
true.
a hidden person that Peter didn't know about for that. To
Yeah,
happen.
and he wasn't really that agile in his wounded condition either.
Yeah. Elsewhere in Santa Barbara, people who are not aware of what's going on are having their own lives, and a letter arrives at the Lockridge mansion for Minx from her boyfriend, the elderly gentleman played by Rudy Valley that was a cellmate of Lionel's.
Yes.
So they've been corresponding. Then Warren asks Minx about the fact that he's discovered that Brick is running the family finances. And Minx says she doesn't want Lionel to know about this necessarily. And then Warren tries to not blackmail her, but says, he'd like to be given the same opportunity as Brick. And I guess Minx thinks that just might be a good idea.
Yeah.
And then she has a letter that he wants Warren to mail. She has a letter that she wants Warren to mail to the same guy, played by William Phipps. I can't remember the character. No, well, not William Phipps.
Rudy Valley.
Rudy Valley.
I thought this was actually a really nice scene. We haven't seen this kind of intimate scene with Warren and Minx very much. We've seen that kind of scene a little bit with Lincoln, but not with Warren. And I was just really intrigued that Warren figured out that Brick was managing the family's financial portfolio. Kind of interested to know how he did that. And I was really interested in his reaction to that, which wasn't necessarily defensive or, even necessarily that I guess he was shocked, maybe, but he seems more bemused by it and sees it as a possible route for an opportunity for himself. So that was kind of interesting and unexpected. The other thing that I found interesting about this discussion was Minx says that she doesn't want Lionel to know. And one of the reasons, apart from the fact that Lionel doesn't have a very good reputation as a businessman, I think, is that Lionel is also a philanderer. And
That's right.
Minx apparently doesn't like this. And that's a really interesting bit of insight, because we've seen her relationship with Augusta. They get on each other's nerves. She's never really shown herself to care for Augusta very much. And yet, she doesn't like the fact that Lionel is cheating on her.
Warren assures her that he won't be doing that in the future.
I don't know how you can make that assurance
Yeah.
of another person, especially one like Lionel.
Especially when he knows Sophia's alive.
Yeah, that's true.
So, we think that there must have been a scene missing because the next thing we know, Warren's at the hospital and he's brought Liz in, or met her there, but likely brought her in since she was at the
Sounds
barn.
like he was meeting her there.
And she has appendicitis.
Yeah.
So, I mean, she's not in this episode, so
No.
it seems unlikely they would have filmed a scene with her. But maybe he was meant to have gotten a phone call or something, and they just didn't have time to film it. Maybe with all the action sequences at the Perkins house, the episode ran long. People crawling over lawns, trying to get to the SWAT team to get to the door and stuff like that. I don't know.
Well, it also occurred to me that maybe they just really wanted to get Mason in the hospital to
Warren.
comfort, or Warren in the hospital to comfort Amy, who was, of course, there.
Mm-hmm.
And that this was maybe just something they came up with. Maybe they had been thinking of a story along those lines with Liz, and maybe they just put that in to be followed up on later.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting because Warren and Amy have only a few seconds to talk at the end of this episode. She does tell him what's going on at the house. But I'm wondering if there's going to be more of a conversation between them in the next episode, or
Maybe.
they brought these two together for only this short conversation. Is there something else that's going to lead to that?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really think what, except remember Brick does work for Warren's family. I mean, maybe Warren can inadvertently put in a good word for Brick, because Amy's not very happy with Brick right now. Maybe something like that.
Mm-hmm. At first I thought, Warren's going to run down to the house where people are being kept hostage, but then I realized there wasn't really anyone there
Yeah.
that he would run into.
Yeah, if
that
Jade's
for,
being
you
kept away, like, that's the person in his age group he would know of the Perkins family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you wouldn't expect Lakin to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Unless he thinks Lakin's at that party.
Mm.
But,
anyway, that didn't happen in this episode.
yeah, so, I'm not quite sure what the purpose of them running into each other was from the writer's standpoint. So Kelly is angry at Maggie Gillis for not shooting Peter.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, she's been shot, so they're bandaging her up. And that guy with a weird hat, so I'm guessing maybe a SWAT guy comes in, and he's annoyed too that she didn't shoot. But Cruz said, well, I'm the one who's going to write up the report, and I'm not going to put anything negative in there.
Mm-hmm.
And Cruz had earlier called for a police psychiatrist, and guess who the SWAT guy shows up with? Marcello Armonti.
Mm-hmm.
Not Cruz's favorite guy after that one little run-in they had in the hallway in front of Sophia's suite a few days ago.
Mm-hmm.
He specifically says, I thought you were going to bring the police psychiatrist. And he goes, but we lucked out and got this even better guy, the most renowned psychiatrist in Europe. So Cruz doesn't, let that hinder things, though. He promptly hands Marcello a folder. No, Marcello says, I've read this folder about the Carnation Killer profile. And then Cruz says, we got a whole lot more. And he hands him some profiles of Peter Flint. And he says, and Antonio Fiorno, before he was Peter Flint. So he's Marcello ends up with 3 or 4 empty-looking manila folders in his hand.
He's given a lot of homework to do. And I sort of wondered about this because my assumption was that the psychiatrist was brought in to kind of assess the situation from the point of view of Peter's potential psychological makeup in the various situations they're going to be in this crisis. And so for Marcello to be having to read these swaths of files and trying to do sort of moment-to-moment intervention, it just seemed like a lot.
Yeah, I mean, most of the hostages have been rescued before Marcello's even
Yeah.
on the scene, and now it's just Joe who's likely to be killed very quickly, unless Peter thinks that's his way out of there.
Yeah.
So Marcello's going to have to read quickly, but maybe he'll do it over the break between episodes, and by the next one he'll have the perfect profile of Peter Flint and the correct way to deal with him, all ready to go.
Well, I also, we don't know quite how this is going to go down, but if this whole situation with Peter extends beyond this particular situation, so if Peter, were to somehow make an escape or grab Kelly and, we move into the next chapter of Peter terrorizing people in other situations, then that psychological makeup and Armando's take on it might prove to be Marcello's take on it might prove to be quite useful.
Mm-hmm. Inside, Peter has the gun on Joe, but Joe starts talking about Peter's suicide note, manages to mention all the women he's killed and Channing. Mm-hmm. And then Peter says, "What are you talking about?" But then he basically says, "You're going to die now anyway," so they don't have a chance to have that conversation, but I suspect at the beginning of the next episode they will, because I think Peter needs to find out that someone added something to his suicide note, and he needs to tell someone else so that information can get out. So I suspect Joe will bring it up again right away.
That's what I think too.
It seemed kind of a clunky way to introduce it at the end of this episode.
But I think that has to come out because if it doesn't, then they'll just think it was Peter and the case is shut. And it can't be shut because we have to know more about this.
Yeah. And that was it for that episode. So the hostage taking continues. Larry's still alive. Maggie's still alive. So we didn't think Maggie was necessarily going to survive this episode when she started dressing like Kelly. But there's still time for Peter to shoot people. Cruz tried to get someone to tell him how many more clips of ammunition Peter had, but he never got that information, and we don't really know either. I guess it depends how much was stolen from the warehouse, right?
We
that
haven't
would be the
seen
number
him
they should go
reload
by.
the thing, but
No, I don't know how many bullets are in a clip, but he's shot at least 20 times. A couple times he just shot into the ceiling.
He's been banging away on the gun with the gun out the window. I mean, he's been using it a lot.
Yeah. So, who knows if he runs out of bullets? Maybe he'll just run out the back door and they'll... I mean, the house is supposedly surrounded, but there's still Cece and Eden unaccounted for. They could walk in the back door or something. Although with the house surrounded, they hopefully...
Eden's there.
Oh, that's right. Eden arrived. Eden arrived at the house across the street just towards the end. That's right. So, yeah, I don't know if there's another potential hostage for him other than Joe. So, but maybe that'll keep Joe alive if Peter thinks he needs him to get out of that house.
Or if Kelly offers herself up for Joe.
Just don't see that happening. Don't see Joe allowing that either.
Yeah, I don't know, but...
Or Cruz, or Eden, or anyone.
I don't think it's over yet.
No?
Plus, it's a soap opera, so it's never really over.
Yeah, it could be months before it's over. We'll find out what happens next in episode 150 of Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara.
Bye-bye.
Happy 150th episode! We watched episode 150 of Santa Barbara, originally aired Wednesday, February 27th, 1985. All right, so Joe and Peter spend the day in the Perkins house, while across the street, Cruz, Kelly, Eden, are
Marcello.
and Marcello are coordinating the police officers to try and figure out how to get Peter to come out of the house. So Kelly thinks that the wedding pushed Peter over the edge, and Cruz has heard from Mason that Marissa told him that there is a way through to the attic due to some incomplete work that was done up there. So Mason wants a tape of Kelly's voice so that he can play it in the attic and lure Peter up there. Meanwhile, while he's doing that, Cruz is trying a plan to get Peter to come out the front door so the snipers can get him. Now, Kelly makes the recording reluctantly for Cruz, but she says that she would prefer to connect with Peter herself. Eden is annoyed when Marcello wants to help Kelly in his professional capacity. Kelly insists to Marcello that Peter wouldn't hurt her. But Marcello points out that he already has. Kelly's annoyed by that. She says, "I've met doctors like you. When Channing died, when Joe went to prison, they're all cold, calm, and arrogant, and within 10 minutes they think they know all about you." Didn't do an impression of Robin right there.
That kind of gives us the idea that Kelly has had some therapy in her past, maybe on many different occasions.
At least those two occasions she mentions, and maybe when her mother died as well. So this is interesting. Marcello being a psychiatrist, and Kelly having some history with psychiatrists. This is an interesting avenue to explore. And maybe her headaches can be attributed to some psychological thing, and Marcello may be able to help her with that.
Yeah.
Marcello gets her to admit that she wishes Peter was dead, and that she wants to kill him herself.
Now, I seem to recall that when she was first brought in, when she was off in the desert, having her chase with Peter, that when she first came in, she wanted him dead. So I didn't necessarily think this was a huge revelation.
But she'd been kind of backpedaling the last episode or so, saying, "Oh, it's the brain tumor causing this, and we shouldn't hate him because of that."
Yeah,
That's where I thought she was coming from.
I don't necessarily see that as a completely opposite standpoint. She may not really view him as being fully responsible for his actions, but that doesn't mean she suddenly wants him to be alive.
In the other room, there's two rooms now. There's the front room, and then there's, I'm guessing, the kitchen. Eden tells Cruz she's impressed with how he's handling this and wants to go away with him. And he agrees, because I think they're both worried that this thing could fade away even more than Cruz, because she says, if you give me time to think, I'm going to try and pull back. So.
And we see Marcello in the background kind of watching them. Yeah.
So that's interesting. In the Perkins house, Peter is confused, quite a bit confused throughout this episode. He asks where Ginger went and then where Kelly went. Then he thinks Joe is Mason. So Joe decides to try and use this by telling him that Kelly called off the wedding to Joe because she really loves Peter. Peter doesn't believe him. Then some of the things Joe say do make sense. Joe keeps saying again and again that Kelly wants to be with Peter, and at one point says, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." So Peter believes it occasionally. So Joe's hope is that on one of those occasions he will walk out the door in order to be with Kelly and get shot by the snipers.
Yeah, I thought this actually was kind of an interesting scene, because we're seeing kind of a different side of Peter, I thought, or of Joe, I thought, than we've really seen before, in that he's being kind of cagey and manipulative, and he's not rock'em sock'em Joe. He's, almost being a bit Mason-like in trying to think his way out of it.
It's interesting. He keeps repeating things because, something that he repeats earlier that Peter doesn't believe. He manages to get Peter later to believe by saying, "Oh yeah, I remember you told me this earlier," and then Peter agrees, "Yeah, but I did tell you that."
Mm-hmm.
Cruz says it's time to give Mason the signal, and calls Peter. They wanted to try and coordinate the phone call to Peter with Mason breaking into the attic so that the sound of the phone ringing would cover that. So he tells Peter that Kelly's dying because Peter shot her, something Joe mentions a lot and Peter gets angry with and tells him not to mention again. So Cruz tells Peter that Kelly is refusing to get into the ambulance until she sees Peter. Peter goes back and forth between kind of believing this and not. He only lets Kelly say the word Peter into the phone, basically, and then pulls it back. Peter thinks it's a trick and tells Cruz to bring Kelly over. So Cruz wants Peter to come because Kelly is too injured to move. Peter wants Kelly to come over even though she's been shot. Marcello comes on the phone as her doctor and says that she definitely can't be moved. Peter is finding this all too confusing and just says, "You've got 10 minutes," and hangs up. So Mason apparently needs 13 minutes to get into position. So they're 3 minutes short, and Cruz is hoping that Joe can stall for those 3 extra minutes. So they're just waiting around, and Cruz mentions Cece and says, "He didn't get all those medals during the war just standing around looking at the clock." So this is another reference to Cece's war record that Cruz now knows all about. And then Marcello is intrigued by that and asks Eden, "So your father..." I'm going to do an accent. "So your father fought in the war." No, it's terrible. "So your father fought in World War II. What rank was he?" And Eden says... Eden's annoyed, actually, that Marcello is asking her this, but she says lieutenant, Air Force pilot. So, a little more information about this storyline. Now, Kelly, I guess, was cold, and Eden gave her jacket. I didn't actually see that. But later, while she's wearing it, she realizes Eden's gun is in the pocket. And this gives Kelly a plan. She pretends to want a nap in the kitchen. They have some stretchers there. So she takes a nap on that, and Eden finally leaves the kitchen and turns off the light. And then Kelly sneaks out the door. That can't be all that's happening in Santa Barbara, because Warren and Elizabeth. While Warren waits for Elizabeth to come out of surgery, he meets her hospital roommate, Maggie Gillis, the police officer who was shot pretending to be Kelly in the last episode. She has one arm in a sling and asks for Warren's help to put on her shoes. I think she's hoping to get discharged and doesn't want the nurse to think she's helpless and can't fend for herself. So she wants to put on a good show. He tries to engage her in conversation a bit while waiting, and she kind of blows him off, and then he comes across a free bouquet of flowers that someone who's checking out is trying to pass on to someone else, so he brings those to her, and they end up chatting a bit before Elizabeth arrives. Maggie ends up having a flashback to when she failed to shoot Peter, and says, "Oh, I thought I was over it." So it sounds like there's some kind of PTSD maybe that kept her from being able to pull that trigger. When Warren finds out that she was at the Perkins house, he said that he had word that nothing's actually changed since she got in. And then they talk a bit more, and he mentions that he was dating Summer, and then she realizes, having worked on that case, that he's Warren Lockridge.
Yeah.
And then Elizabeth does get wheeled in. She's still loopy from the anesthetic. Maggie eavesdrops on Elizabeth and Warren and assumes they're a couple. Elizabeth wants to move into the farmhouse with Warren and fix it up together. So this is in her groggy state. So, but either way, Warren doesn't really seem too keen on that. I think he's interested in Maggie. He's a little annoyed that Elizabeth's making it seem like they're together. Yes,
and at sort of various, for Elizabeth in her sort of groggy state, various sort of emotional points for Elizabeth when she's trying to get him to commit to kind of starting to build a life together, he suddenly hops up and runs over to check on Maggie again. So it's not good optics for Elizabeth, and I almost hope that when she comes out of this, she won't remember too much about it, because Warren's not really treating her that well in this.
She's babbling a bit, and Maggie's listening to the whole thing, and she goes, "Oh, I think this could be something real, not a fraud or a forgery." So this might be something that sticks in Maggie's mind, and might come back to haunt Elizabeth in the coming days.
Yeah. But it actually reminded me a little bit, of course, Elizabeth's not in her usual state, but it reminded me a little bit of Brick's conversation with Elizabeth, in that, he's clearly not interested, but she's going to try pouring her heart out anyway, and she's trying this under the influence with Warren, and it's not working either.
It'd be interesting if there's a little triangle between Elizabeth, Warren, and Maggie in the coming weeks. Now, back where the action is, the snipers are getting into position. Peter wonders why Kelly isn't coming. Keeps looking out the window. Joe reminds him that he shot Kelly, and that he tries to get Peter to go out of the house again, because, if it was me, I wouldn't let anything stop me from getting to Kelly. I would just go right over there. So Peter starts inviting Joe to come along. I think he wants a shield from the snipers that a part of him knows are out there, right? So he keeps saying, "Oh, let's both go together." And then Joe's like, "Oh, I guess that's not what I want." So he kind of pulls back. And then Peter says, "No, no one's going anywhere. Kelly's coming here." So they go back and forth a little bit on that. And suddenly 7:30 comes, and that's the time. They get the signal that Mason's men are ready to go in the attic, and at the same time someone spots a woman on the porch at the back of the Perkins house, the back porch. But it's too late. The 7:30 has come, and Mason plays the tape of Kelly's voice in the attic saying, "Peter, where are you? I can't find you." And Peter starts up the stairs. Joe sees the real Kelly entering from, I guess, the kitchen area, which is to the left of the stairwell. And she's got Eden's gun ready to go. He tries to indicate that she should get back, because I think he figures that whoever's upstairs has probably got it handled. But Kelly steps forward, and Peter sees her. And Kelly, I don't know if Kelly was trying to fire the gun and maybe hadn't taken the safety off.
That's what I was thinking.
Or if she was, hesitating at firing the gun. She did seem to be moving her finger to me.
Yeah.
And Joe shouts, "Do it!" And she can't pull that trigger somehow. And then Peter aims the machine pistol, and Joe jumps in front of Kelly, shouting, "No!" And then a gunshot is heard. And that is our cliffhanger for episode 150, and it's only Wednesday. So
it seems like Peter might have shot Joe, or he might have shot Kelly, or maybe the team upstairs, if the SWAT people managed to get in through the upstairs, maybe have shot Peter.
Or the sniper across the street.
Or the
saw you had a clear shot of Peter.
Street. Yeah.
So I don't know my gunshot sounds that much to know whether or not it was the machine pistol, although that tended to fire 2 or 3 shots usually when Peter fired it, but they may have just cut off the sound after one. So we'll see what happens.
I was kind of, as I often am sometimes with these sorts of shows, thinking of a quote I read by Jordan Peele a few years ago when he came out with that movie, Get Out. And I remember he said that he thought part of the reason the movie had done so well is because he made sure his character was smart and did the things that you should do in these situations, and didn't do stupid things, because characters who do stupid things just aren't sympathetic. So I was thinking about that while I was watching Kelly basically blow up their entire operation. And yeah, it is hard to be sympathetic to really stupid characters.
I think she's got it in her head that she needs to be the one to kill Peter because it's all her fault.
Yeah.
So a little more believable than some other random acts, like some of the weird stuff Joe used to do.
Yeah, yeah. But it's all part of the fun, too.
So my favorite storyline has gone from park into neutral, and is poised to start rolling down a hill to its inevitable May the 20th conclusion. So we will see as that storyline wraps up in the coming weeks, and you may not even be aware of it.
Oh.
But you will see soon enough, I think.
Okay.
May the 20th isn't really a spoiler, because the date is actually part of the storyline.
Cool.
So that's, in my memory anyway, it was one of the best storylines. We'll see how it plays out in real life, considering I probably only heard 80% of it on audio.
Well, I know you were, when we were talking off camera, mourning the loss of the Amanda Lockridge storyline. So.
I do remember, and at the time you don't realize it's the last you've heard of it. And so you're just like, well, when's this going to continue? So now 8 years, having watched all 8 years, I kind of have some memory of what got dropped and what didn't. Although I have to say, there's very few storylines that I can really get my head around now after 30 years. So a lot of it is new to me, although I think I must have seen at least one or two scenes of this siege that we've had for the last 2 or 3 days, because it sort of vaguely rang a bell at one point. So we are all looking forward to episode 151 of Santa Barbara.
Bye-bye.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We watched episode 151, originally aired Thursday, February 28th, 1985. The last day of February in that year, which was not a leap year. So they do a reprise of the end of the last episode with Peter going upstairs to the sound of Kelly's voice on a tape. Now Mason, although he's in the attic, is never seen in this or the previous episode. Joe sees that Kelly is sneaking in through the kitchen with a gun, and Joe yells at her, "Do it!" which actually is what alerts Peter to her presence in this version. And he comes back down the stairs, and Kelly seems to be pulling the trigger but not able to fire. And Joe runs in front of her, and then Peter puts 2 bullets into him. And then he and Joe fight, but Peter almost immediately lifts Joe up and throws him out the front window of the Perkins house. Joe is taken to the hospital. Then Kelly stops Peter from killing her by saying she's pregnant, which is a really good thinking at the spur of the moment. So, of course, Peter immediately is so happy that he's going to have a son, and things go well for a while, conversation-wise, but then Peter wonders if the baby is Joe's, or someone else's. And then Kelly says she's only ever been with Peter. So that, once again, calms him down for a little while. Back across the street, Marcello suggests to Cruz that he call Peter, as he's likely confused right now by Kelly being up and about rather than being shot. So Cruz calls, and Peter answers and briefly speaks with Cruz and then tears the phone out of the socket. So now they have lost communication with Peter. One of the police experts lets it be known that he's pretty sure Peter is out of ammunition, which is not entirely comforting to Eden and the others, because that's not the same as being 100% sure.
Plus, as Eden points out, Peter's MO is actually to strangle his victims, so Kelly could still be in danger.
Cruz gets the idea to cut the power, thinking maybe they can sneak in or something when the power's out. And Marcello talks a little more about Peter's state of mind and saying that Peter isn't really worried about survival at all. He's either going to kill himself or kill Kelly or kill both of them. So this pretty much makes Cruz think that they got to act, as soon as possible. In the Perkins house, when the lights go out, Peter takes Kelly into the next room, thinking this is some trick of Cruz's, and is surprised to find he's in a nursery.
Mm-hmm.
And he immediately thinks that Kelly did it for him as a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
So he puts down the gun and just wanders around the nursery looking at everything, and Kelly kind of inches towards it, but he keeps putting his attention back on her just as she's about to get the gun each time. And suddenly he has an excruciating headache,
Mm-hmm.
and he's shouting, "Who's doing this to me?" or "Why are they doing this to me?" And then he gets the idea that Kelly is the one doing it to him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So then he looks like he grabs an electrical cord from a lamp or something. He starts to strangle Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
And then Cruz appears in the living room and shoots Peter.
Yeah.
And Peter's lying on the floor, and Cruz says it's over.
Mm-hmm.
And then Peter says, "I'm glad.
Yeah.
I love you, Kelly." And then he loses consciousness. The next time we see him, he has a sheet over him.
Mm-hmm.
So it appears that Peter Flint is dead.
I kind of like the thought of Mason crouched behind a bunch of trunks in the attic the whole time this is happening.
The tape player.
Yeah.
A reel-to-reel.
Yeah.
So I was expecting to see Peter, in the morgue or something, pop up from under his sheet with his ability to thwart death, but we didn't see Peter at all anymore after after that scene. At the hospital, Maggie tries to leave, but the nurse keeps thwarting her. She sent Warren to find out how Joe is. Now, throughout the episode, Warren leaves and comes back with news. And I was trying to think where he could be going, but it occurs to me that maybe he is visiting Amy, because Marissa would be with Amy.
Yeah.
And Marissa was in contact with Mason by phone, and it makes sense that Mason would keep Marissa up to date on what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that must be where Warren is going, even though Marissa, Jade, Mason are not in this episode. Their presence is probably, there, even though we're not seeing them.
I just assumed he was popping out to the nurses' station to chat up whatever nurses were around and get information that way. But
So Ted arrives, and his beard is growing in.
mm-hmm.
And he's sitting there, and suddenly he gets called in to a room adjacent to the waiting area, and it's Jackie and Larry.
Mm-hmm.
So he meets Larry. So now they appear to be in the room on the left that Kelly has previously been in.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen the room on the right before where Peter has been. But there's another new area now for the people who don't have quite the money of the Capwells. Through the folding doors at the back, through the swinging doors at the back of the waiting area set, if you go through there, you're in a new hallway, and that's where you meet the rooms that two people have to share, which is where Elizabeth and Maggie are. So Elizabeth and Maggie are sharing a room. At the back of the set, Jackie and Larry are in a room on the left. Joe is presumably, he's in emergency and then he's in surgery. So
Yeah.
Ted and Warren, of course, run into each other in that area because Warren's hovering around, and Ted apologizes to Warren, and Warren basically says he doesn't hold grudges. So, and he actually says, I've actually tried to put in a good word with Lakin for you, but she's kind of stubborn.
Yeah.
So I think, maybe Warren and Ted have patched things up, and
For now, anyway.
for now. I mean, if Peter is dead, that means there's no one to refute the last line of his suicide note.
Yeah, I was thinking that myself.
So the doctor comes in and says that Joe has too much internal damage and that they actually just stopped the operation and patched him up, which is really shocking. He says the next time he regains consciousness will probably be his last, so make sure his wife is there.
Yeah.
So this, throws Ted for a loop. Back at the house across the street from the Perkins house, Marcello offers to drive Kelly to the hospital to be with Joe. Cruz and Eden go in at the same time, and they both arrive in the elevator. Ted goes to greet them, and Kelly asks, "How's Joe?" And Ted can't bring himself to tell her what the doctor said. Mm-hmm. So he says he's got a good chance of pulling through. So that's what Cruz, Kelly, and Eden hear from him. Kelly and Cruz go off, and then he says to Eden, "I don't know why I said that."
Yeah.
He's actually going to die.
Mm-hmm.
So in the chapel, Kelly is praying and says, "We've waited so long to be together." And Eden asks the doctor just not to tell Kelly that Joe is dying. And so Kelly goes into Joe's room, and he's lying there, and he's in a room now. He's lying there, and she sits there waiting for him to regain consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Now Maggie finally gets signed out, but she won't leave until she knows about Joe. Mm-hmm. Well, she runs into Cruz, who still thinks Joe's going to be fine, and says, "Oh yeah, Joe's going to be fine." So she feels happy about that and accepts Warren's offer of a ride home.
Mm-hmm.
But she has him drop her off near her house, not in front of her house. And she says she hopes they meet again under better circumstances. So this is interesting. I mean, it makes sense to some extent that maybe she wouldn't want a stranger knowing where she lives. But I'm wondering if there's someone at home she didn't want Warren running into.
Oh, that's a possibility. I also thought, we'd mentioned before when she froze up that she had perhaps a bit of PTSD from some past incident. And it did occur to me that she too might have something haunting her from her past, like Summer did. And, that seems to be the kind of girl that Warren is attracted to. So there might be something deeper there as well.
So Marcello and Eden are hanging out outside of Joe's room while Kelly's in there. He asks Eden how long she's known Cruz, because he's been watching them together and realizes they're a couple. Also, probably knows that Cruz and Eden were on the Orient Express together from last year, right? But we haven't actually seen Cruz in any of those flashbacks. And she doesn't want to answer. She says, "Oh, I don't like you." And it has something to do with our first meeting, which she says it's odd that she can't remember.
Yeah.
So it's interesting now. Obviously, since meeting Marcello, she's tried to remember the details of their first meeting and realizes there's something wrong. So this goes back all the way back to when she and Cruz first mentioned the Orient Express, 4 or 5 months ago, where she says that trip that I can't quite remember correctly. So this is something that they've had planned. The writers have had planned since the beginning. So Marcello says he wants to be friends with her, and she says she doesn't. She just wants him and Sophia to leave. And then he says, "We could become romantically involved. It would upset Sophia, and she would want to leave town." And she says, "You're not serious." And he says, "I think I could become very easily serious about you." So suddenly Marcello has taken on a whole another twist.
I was thinking that we've just gotten rid of one creepy blonde guy with Peter being shot, and now we've replaced him before the episode's even over with another creepy blonde guy.
And she's just gotten rid of Lionel going after her, and now she's got this other old guy going after her.
Yeah.
He's probably a little younger than Lionel, but he's in his 40s easily, and Lionel's approaching 50.
If he's this world-renowned psychotherapist.
Yeah, that's hilarious that they swapped out Peter for Marcello in the same episode.
Yeah.
So, where do you think that's going to go with Marcello?
Well, I think that it will make Eden even more determined than ever to try to remember what it was about the first meeting she had with him. And I think perhaps And maybe she'll get Cruz to help her to probe into his background a little bit more. And, sort of the whole relationship with Sophia.
Mm-hmm. I think she'll definitely still be against Marcello treating Kelly.
Yeah.
And if she gets wind that he's going to want to hypnotize her or something, maybe she'll put something together there.
Yeah, yeah. And I think if you think about Eden, she's the kind of person who does her homework, and she is the kind of person who puts things together. So I think maybe through Eden we'll find out a little bit more about Marcello, and we'll find out a little bit more about what Sophia's life has been since she left Santa Barbara the first time.
Well, maybe she'll do what she did with Lionel and agree to go out with Marcello just so she can get more information out of him.
Yeah, maybe.
Once she realizes, there's something missing from her memory from that time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a possibility. Although hopefully she would let Cruz in on that plan, otherwise he'd get jealous of Marcello.
Yeah. It's also, to me, it's put Marcello, I was complaining a few weeks ago that we didn't really know what his deal was. But, this creepy turn, plus his obvious ability to use hypnosis and his understanding of the human mind, it actually makes him quite a formidable character, and his German accent. And it actually makes him quite sinister.
It very quickly turned that way, didn't it?
Yeah, so this might be setting up something that will replace the Peter Flint going insane and becoming a serial killer plotline.
It's, because I guess, he will be involved with Kelly, and that'll be, the replacement for Peter in Kelly's life will be Marcello. We did actually look up Wolf Muser just yesterday, and I found out that he's playing Hitler in Man in the High Castle, which I haven't seen yet. I had, I think, 3 seasons on Amazon Prime, and I don't know if his character appears much or at all in season 1, but clearly that's the Man in the High Castle, so it'd be interesting to see him. I don't know if I've seen him in anything else since Santa Barbara. So.
The other thing I wondered coming out of this, which might be a plot line, I suppose, I don't know, is if Kelly could possibly be pregnant with either Peter's baby or Joe's, and if that could actually end up to be something as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't even thought of that.
So, and as for Joe, it doesn't look like he's going to survive. So that might be wrapping up the Joe and Kelly thing if they're planning to take the story in another direction. We haven't.
Do you think Peter's dead?
Well, I assume the aneurysm's got to kill him eventually too. I would assume they would check his pulse before they throw a blanket over him and take him down to the morgue.
So assuming Peter is dead, who do you think the next person to go will be then?
Well, it sounds like it could be Joe. We haven't reached the point, with some soap operas, you would assume that someone will find a magic medallion or something to bring someone back to life. I don't think we're at that point with Santa Barbara yet. I'm not saying we won't get to that point.
I think A. Martinez mentioned a magic medallion on that cruise.
We certainly have long gone past that point on shows like Days of Our Lives, but
Santa Barbara's pretty grounded in reality.
Yeah, at this point it seems to be. So that's why, unless Joe takes a sudden turn for the better, as Amy did.
Yeah, that's right. The next episode, he'll be putting in his tie. I'm feeling much better. Amy, let's go.
I guess
they've got a blown-out window now, too.
That's true.
The Perkins house is... First, they had a bomb.
Yeah.
Then they had an earthquake. Now, their front window's been knocked out by a lunatic. Plus, multiple bullet holes in the ceiling of the living room.
Exactly.
And some guy, burst through the roof to get into the attic. So that house is going to need some repairs. So.
Yeah, so I think that's, depending on where the writers want to take the story, if they want to take it away from the Joe and Kelly story and start maybe picking up some of the threads. Kelly's indicated she's been to a lot of therapists, so there might be some mental instability there. If she feels she killed Joe, that could send her over the edge in an interesting way. If she turns out to be pregnant, possibly with Peter's child, that could send her off in an interesting direction too. We have now the creepy...
She's still got her headaches.
She's still got her headaches. We've got the creepy presence now of Marcello. So there's all sorts of ways that could go as well.
We've got the Maggie Warren Elizabeth triangle that suddenly appeared. So, and it appears no one will realize that the confession was false. Peter's note. So people will think that's settled.
Yeah. So we've got that's got to be. We know that confession was false.
Yeah, we still don't know who typed.
But we don't know who typed it, and therefore, because we know it's false, it is possible that Peter did actually kill Channing. But
that's true too.
We've got to find out that that's true, and we don't know actually who killed Channing. So we've got to find that out.
Well, if Peter is dead, maybe we'll see him in the flashback when they reenact the murder at some point.
That might be a reason for Peter not to be dead, apart from, the continuing threat to Kelly and all that.
Yeah, because he's the only one who could say, I didn't say that in the confession. So
the only other way would be if the person who added that somehow revealed themselves.
Well, if it was someone protecting Lionel and Warren, then it's difficult to know what would bring them to recant that, knowing Lionel and Warren, would be in trouble again. We know now that Lionel was locked in that room.
Yeah.
We know Warren's story that he came in after Channing had been shot. Unless there's another witness.
Yeah, or the person had another agenda for it as well, which might be completely unrelated. And we don't know what that is. I was saying at the time, this is the kind of thing Dominic would do. I don't know why Dominic would have any kind of idea of doing that. That seems to go directly against Sophia's agenda. But it could just be some completely left of center thing like that.
I guess with my other idea of it being Ginger, she could show up at the Lockridge door and say, I'd like some money to keep from telling everyone that Peter's confession is fake and sending you back to jail. That's one way the third party that we're not expecting could be part of it. All right, I think that's it for this episode. And we've got a Friday episode coming up. So we're about to wrap up a very exciting week in Santa Barbara, and we may have seen the last of the Carnation Killer.
We might have.
So we will see you in just a few seconds after we watch episode 152 of Santa Barbara.
Bye-bye.
Well, it's a sad day in Santa Barbara as the Carnation Killer has claimed his last victim. And we're so overcome with grief that we had to come down and have a fat pie pizza. I couldn't even eat my normal Chicago style. I had to have a Detroit style for the first time, and it was really good. Now I'm going to have both in the future. So Marissa and Jade want to wait with Joe. Kelly doesn't want to leave him, but as you know, they only allowed 2 people, so they promised to tell Kelly immediately as soon as Joe wakes up. So Kelly goes to the chapel. There, CC tells Mason that the family has decided not to tell Kelly that Joe is going to die, and Mason is really upset by this. He thinks Kelly will be upset, and he thinks it's the wrong thing to go, and CC orders him to toe the family line.
Yeah, no coming together of Mason and CC in this crisis.
No. Even though CC theoretically knows that Mason didn't kill Channing. That hasn't really improved their relationship at all. So Joe does wake up, and basically Marissa says goodbye to him, and Jade's crying the whole time, and they get Kelly, and she comes in, and she's alone with Joe, and she tells Joe he's going to get better, but she still thinks that's true. Joe says he won't, and he tells her that's okay. And then Joe dies. So this is a really unexpected thing, because, you know, Joe Perkins was the person that the whole show revolved around. A lot of the plot lines are related to Joe, and now he's gone, and we still don't know who killed Channing.
Yeah.
So, and the main couple of the show is torn apart. And of course, over this scene we hear "If Ever You're in My Arms Again," which we hadn't heard for a while. So this is likely the last time we'll hear that song.
Yeah, I would think so.
And Joe's face is all cut up from the glass that Peter threw him through.
And he's got kind of, I imagine, white makeup on to make him look very pale.
I would say it doesn't look very good. I would say if you put red lines on your face for Halloween, it would look about the same. So didn't really... at first I couldn't figure out why he had stripes on his face when he was shot, and then I remembered the glass he got thrown through.
Yeah.
So then Kelly is very angry with the doctor for not telling her that Joe was going to die, and then she finds out that everyone knew, the entire family knew, so she's really angry with them, as Mason had predicted. And when Marcello finds out, he tells Mason it was a mistake not to tell her, and Mason agrees with him.
Well, and you know, I think obviously it was, because he was going to die momentarily, so it's not like this was something she would never find out.
And after Marcello spent some time with her, he says she's really upset that she didn't tell Joe all the things she wanted to, which she would have if she'd known he was going to die.
Yeah, she probably wouldn't have hung out with CC in the chapel at all. She probably would have just stayed with him.
And she wouldn't have spent the whole time, you know, telling him how he was going to pull through and everything.
Yeah.
So Marcello uses an old trick to help Kelly get to sleep. He hypnotizes her using that same light pen that he used to hypnotize Eden. So I think we've gotten rid of one psycho, and we may have replaced him with another in the same episode.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what he's doing with this hypnosis, really. I mean, all we see him is using it to calm Kelly, but
because Eden asks
it for so many things.
Earlier when he says, "Oh, I got Kelly to fall asleep," Eden asks, "What did you do?" He says, "I just got her to fall asleep," and right away we're thinking, did he hypnotize her? And then later we see that he does that.
Well, it also makes me wonder just if he uses it regularly on Sophia as well, or, you know,
well, that's
something
interesting.
like that going on.
I mean, one thought that comes to mind when you say that is Sophia seeing Lionel in the mirror, which clearly can't have happened. So did Marcello mess with her mind on that day?
It makes me think that Marcello has the possibility, has the potential to be behind a lot of some of the sort of sinister things that have been going on. I mean, he could even be a guiding hand behind Channing's murder, potentially.
Yeah, we don't know. He may have been behind that bookcase as well. We don't know.
Yeah.
But I trust we'll see in the coming months.
Yeah.
Maggie Gillis shows up for work after having been told to take a week off. And she's now wearing her arm in a sling just to prove to Cruz she's ready to go back to work. And he tells her to go back home. He suspends her. She says, "Okay, I'll make you a deal. I'll sit at a desk." And he says, "Okay, you can do that till you prove yourself." And she says, "Well, how can I do that behind a desk?" He says, "You can't." So then he comes up with an idea. He says, "Okay, come with me. Check out 25 rounds of ammunition and meet me in the shooting range." And then, you know, she shoots her first 5 bullets at the target and gets them right on. And he says, "Okay, now do the next ones at 20-second intervals." And during the pauses, he's relating to her the whole events of her dressing as Kelly and approaching Peter and seeing Peter in the door and pretending to stumble and pulling her gun, and then now fire at Peter, and she doesn't shoot the gun. So he proves to her that she's still not ready psychologically to go back to work.
I think there's going to be a lot of ongoing friction between Cruz and Maggie if Maggie stays on as a character, which it seems like she's being set up to do.
Well, Cruz did say he'd get in trouble with, I think, the commissioner?
Yeah.
Or the captain, I forget what she said, if he kept her on. So.
And she keeps pushing him the other way. Yeah.
So, then Cruz finds out that Joe is dead, which is a shock to him, because, of course, Ted told him he was going to pull through.
Yeah.
And then he's, like, talking to Joe and saying, what did I do to you, by putting you into that situation? Because really, he could have done things differently, at the siege, and maybe Joe wouldn't have died. So he's kind of blaming himself a bit for what he might have done differently. Now, Sophia, dressed as the Contessa already, calls the hospital and finds out that Joe has died, and she realizes immediately, oh no, she's upset that Joe's dead, and also knows that Kelly's going to need her. So she tries to get Mason to let her see Kelly. Mason says, no, it's family only. He goes, oh, can you meet me at the hospital, please? And for some reason, she shows up half an hour later than she said, which is kind of weird since, she was really anxious to meet him. But she finally shows up and then takes him into, looks like the room that Larry and Maggie were in before. He says, oh, I told you, Kelly's, in too fragile a state. It's going to be family only. And then she says, but I am family. And she starts to take off her glasses. So I think Sophia's going to reveal herself to Mason. So this is the first person she's actively chosen to reveal her identity to.
Potentially,
so every reveal has been a bit different. So, and it was as we thought, that Augusta or Mason would be one of the next two to find out. And Mason's not going to spill this right away until he can figure out a way to twist the knife.
He can use it. So.
Yeah, I think it's still best for him to wait till Gina's about to marry him.
Yeah.
So, Marcello Amonte has flashbacks when he sees Cece. We find out the whole secret of Marcello Armonte in one fell swoop. This week has really introduced the storyline very quickly. Cece, war hero, shot down behind enemy lines, and now we see what it's all been leading to. Marcello remembers himself as like maybe an 8-year-old boy, and he and a downed American airman who looks a lot like Cece Capwell with his hair darkened are hiding in the wine cellar, maybe, or the cellar. There's some wine bottles there, and they can peer through the crack. And Marcello's parents are upstairs being questioned by German soldiers as to the location of the American airman, and they are refusing to give up his location, and the Germans say they're going to kill them if they don't. And Marcello says to Cece, you have to let me go up there, or they will kill them. And then Cece grabs Marcello and covers his mouth, and his parents are executed by the Germans. And Marcello says to Cece after that, I hate you, you're the one who should have died. And then we come back to the present.
So, is this Marcello's revenge? What revenge is he seeking? How far has he or will he go in that revenge?
It seems to me, because I knew this was coming, and I've been watching Marcello and Cece, that he didn't realize it was the same guy until early this week when he first met Cece in person.
Yeah.
When he first was looking at Cece, when Augusta introduced them, I think that's when, when he heard the voice maybe and saw the face in real life, it all came back to him. I mean, it's impossible that he hasn't seen photos of Cece since meeting Sophia, right? I mean, he can't have been totally oblivious to her life, because I imagine they did some research on her past. when she remembered who she was, before she married the Count, or while she married the Count. They probably have the same concerns as the Capwells. Is this a gold digger? So he must have seen photos of Cece.
Yeah.
But maybe with the white hair? I don't know. Probably a wedding photo of him and Cece. He would have had the dark hair. But then again, Marcello was 8. Maybe hearing the voice just really triggered it for him. And that's why he was staring at Cece once he heard his voice, because he was trying to be certain that that's the man he holds responsible for killing his parents. So I think we're in for a wild ride with Marcello now.
Yep. Straight off one very compelling plot line with Peter and Joe and Kelly, and right into a new one.
So trying to figure out what year this might be. I did some reading. It turns out the U.S. Didn't enter the war for many, many years after it started. So this must be in 1942, 43, 44, or 45, I think. I'm not sure when the war ended in 45. So there's 4 possible years. So if we're trying to calculate Cece's age and Marcello's age from this, which I'll do when we get home. I don't have access to my notes at this locale. We'll try and see if we can figure out how old each of those people is based on that wartime history, and how old Cece must have been to be a flyer in the war. Can't really go by the way he looks, because he kind of looks like an old guy with dyed hair. So, anything else you wanted to mention for any of these plots?
No, I think that's about it.
Yeah, I guess Joe is dead, and we'll never find out what happened with the Russians. And Peter's dead, so we'll never find out that someone else typed the end of his suicide note, and the Carnation Killer plotline is finished. And we've got a new character in Maggie, a new character in Larry. Looks like they're starting a whole new thing. The sweeps, I guess, have ended, being March 1st, 1985. And the next sweeps will be in May. And exciting stuff happening May the 20th. But I can't wait to see the run-up to and the conclusion. It's been 35 years since I've seen it, and I still can remember it.
Wow. Well, I'm looking forward to that.
All right, from Bellingham, Washington, this has been Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara, week 30. We'll be back next week with week 31.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Kelly Capwell's Psycho Gazebo.
Are you satisfied?
No! He might not have been in there, but he's here somewhere.
Why are you so positive I was with someone?
Because I saw!
So what? Put that gun away before you hurt somebody.
I'm sorry.
It's too late for apologies, Peter.
Why?
Because it's all changed. You're jealous now, you're possessive, you're unpredictable, and you're always angry. You scare me sometimes.
Scare you? What are you talking about?
Well, it's true, I'm sorry. Whatever we had in the beginning, we somehow managed to lose. I don't feel the same way toward you.
She cannot do this! She can't!
I must admit I was a little shocked. Joe Perkins returned from the dead. But then it suddenly occurred to me that I found the way to commit the perfect murder. Who would ever be able to prosecute the murder of a dead man? Yeah, she almost loved me once. Almost had her. I think she even learned to love me a little bit. She cared just a little more for you than she did for me.
Do you know how much longer I have? Am I gonna make it through the day? I'm not gonna let this happen to me! What? Kelly. Everything that's happened to me is because of you. Hi.
It's you. You scared me to death.
I'd like you to have. I know a shortcut through the alley back here. Come on.
It's over, Peter. It's all over. You're never going to put it happen. I hate you, Peter. You're a terrible lover. Your touch makes my skin crawl. I hate you, Peter. Hate you. Hate you. Hate you.
See you in class tomorrow, Kelly. Here, Kelly.
What's the matter?
I have something for you. No, you didn't. No, you didn't, really. You wouldn't be here if you did. Hi, Veronica.
Boy, am I glad you're home.
In fact, I've already picked out the flowers for the evening. You know, I've got one with me right here. Would you like to see it? They're very pretty.
I give you this ring as a sign of my love and faithfulness.
I give you this ring as a sign of my love and faithfulness.
Are you ready for me, Peter?
Oh, yes, Kelly, I'm ready for you.
How do I look, lover?
Like the most beautiful bride in the world. I love you with all my heart, do you know that?
I love you too.
I have something else for you to wear.
A white flower?
Sure, white's for brides.
Yeah. Sure. Is everything else okay?
There. Now you're perfect. Finally can have a honeymoon that I always dreamed of. Oh, yeah, I am a lucky man.
You don't know how long I waited for this. We're gonna spend the rest of our lives together, Kelly. The way it was always meant to be. Then when time comes for me to die, I know you're gonna want to go with me.
Don't you ever mention his name in this house, you understand me? Ever. This is our house.
All right, I'm sorry.
Listen, Joe's gone. He doesn't exist anymore. And he's never gonna come between us again, you understand?
I have something for you. I'll show you this. Look.
No.
Look.
No.
I want you to wear it in your hair. Just like this. It'll make you beautiful. I want you to be so beautiful for me. And I want you to smell beautiful, too. Here. See, this is all we need. We don't need your father's boat. This is all we need right here. Do you understand? This is it. Perfume, flowers. That's all anyone needs in this life.
Peter, can you give up on us so easily? If you really love me, you wouldn't do this. No one knows Peter like I do. He's really a very gentle, loving man. That's why I care about him so much. He's sick. The doctor gave him pills for the pain, but he knows it won't live much longer. That's why I love him all the more. Peter, if you're listening to this, and I know you are, please don't do this terrible thing you're thinking of.
I won't.
I couldn't bear it.
I won't, Kelly. Don't cry. Don't cry, Kelly.
Hello, Amy. I'm here for the party. I hope I'm not too early.
Got a cop with him!
Oh my God!
Let me go! Kelly! Let me go! Kelly, wait!
Joe Perkins. From the beginning, it's been you. You're the reason we're all here. You should have stayed in prison where you belong. But no. You had to come back and spoil everything. Well, Joe, old buddy, the time is near. Time to say lights out, nighty-night. I've waited for this moment for a long time. And now one quick squeeze on this trigger and you're history. Then Kelly will be mine. All mine.
Peter, you don't want to do this.
That's far enough, Mason.
You need him alive, Peter. He may be the only one who can convince Kelly to come here.
Maybe I should shoot you instead.
I don't think you should shoot anybody, Peter.
Yeah, that's just like old CC. So logical. You're not CC. You're Mason. I hate Mason.
You all lied! No! I'll kill him. I'll kill you.
What's this? Nursery? You had this done for the baby already?
Don't you know they've done this to me? What's going on?
No. It's you, isn't it? Yeah, it's all you. It's not Joe. It's not anyone else. It's you. You're the one who's been trying to hurt me.
No.
Yes, it is. Once you're gone, all my problems will be gone. And then I'll be free.
No, Peter.
You were sent by the devil to destroy me, weren't you? Yes, you were. Bye, Kelly. Goodbye. I love you.
Let her go! Now! It's over! It's over!
Kelly. Okay. I'm glad. I love you.
Kelly Capwell's Psycho Gazebo welcomes Antonio Fiorno, aka Peter Flint.
I'm going to make all your nightmares go away.